as was forecast about a month ago in the Wall Street Journal, and then the Washington Post had more reporting on it before, and the president previewed yesterday. Today, he did an event where he was quite, you can put up number 8, please. He was quite firm in saying unambiguously he does not believe that pregnant women should use Tylenol, which is the pain relief medication that is prescribed almost singularly to pregnant women because other forms of pain relief drugs are not considered safe. Trump administration, president gives unproven medical advice and ties the painkiller to autism. Now, this is a very complicated issue. If you want to be on the national town square and talk about this, and you don't have a degree in these issues, very difficult because there are medical experts, including in the government, Dr. Oz and Bobby Kennedy, and people who work for them, who say absolutely. And this has been around for a while. This theory, the president was absolute today. Here's the president, number 9, please, talking about Tylenol and being emphatic that pregnant women should not take it.
First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism.
Throughout the press conference, the president was emphatic and maybe in some ways grew more emphatic in saying this. I know a fair amount about this as a layperson. And if you want to err on the side of caution, there are some lead medical experts who think the president's absolutely right. And he's putting the weight of the federal government behind it. Amber, do you see this as a simple issue, a complex one? How do you see the decision, both a governmental decision and then for individual women who are pregnant?
Yeah, I'll start with actually the second point. This is going to be very difficult for pregnant women because they were previously advised to avoid other painkillers in pregnancy and other fever reducers in pregnancy, particularly Advil, which can cause things like low amniotic fluid and issues with the kidneys and the lungs in their developing children. So what they advised today during that press conference was that Tylenol can be used in rare circumstances and for short periods of time at the lowest effective dose. So they're not taking it off the table entirely, but they're not going to give it for, let's say, a low-grade fever, or they're going to advise doctors not to give it for a low-grade fever. They referenced some of the scientific research in this press conference as well. One of the notable ones is that the dean of the Harvard Medical School said recently that he believed there was a causal link, according to a review of 47 previous studies of about 100,000 pregnant women, I believe, that found this causal link between Tylenol and acetaminophen or Tylenol and autism. And so it's not like this came out of nowhere. In fact, the Washington Post ran an article back in 2021 about similar guidance that was offered by the CDC, although at a lower level, that advised that there were potentially risks to a woman's pregnancy from frequent Tylenol use. So this, again, is not out of left field. I want to see what the review process and what studies precisely the government is looking at. But going back to earlier in the admin, when the HHS released their review of the research on transgenderism in young people, people were apoplectic that they reached this conclusion that quote unquote gender affirming care did not improve mental health outcomes in children. And then they found out that most of the scientists on the panel were actually people who described themselves as liberal, and that the science was pretty well researched. So just judging on that, I'm perfectly fine with this announcement, pending what further evidence is presented.
Steve.
I think people shouldn't take medical advice from politicians. I think Donald Trump said at one point in his remarks, I just have a feeling about this. Now, I don't think that pregnant women or anybody should take medical advice from somebody who says, I just have a feeling about this. I think RFK has absolutely no medical training whatsoever, has a long history of talking about debunked scientific theories, has a long history of profiting off of some of his more extreme anti-vax views, has a long history of running an organization that sued vaccine makers, and that was his point. So I just think we don't. The vast majority of studies that have been done on this topic say that Tylenol is safe, and I think this is just a huge problem that we are letting the health infrastructure of this government be run by politicians and not by scientists. And I think it's one of from a putting science aside and just talking about politics. I think this is one of the greatest vulnerabilities of the Trump administration. And if you look at all these vaccine issues, it's 70-30, 80-20, 65-35. People want to protect their children from polio, from measles, from chickenpox, from all these diseases, and they want to follow the science. They do not want to follow politics. And RFK and the people around him are just wrong about this. And it's not going to be, it's going to hurt the country long term. And I think it's not going to be politically beneficial ultimately for Republicans.
Amber.
Well, there were several scientists on that stage, three of them, in fact, including Dr. Marty Makary, who was at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who was at Stanford University. Both are incredibly well credentialed. We could debate about Dr. Mehmet Oz, fair enough, but Bhattacharya and Makary, I mean, you can't question their credentials and their expertise. Dr. Marty Makary wrote a book called Blind Spots, I believe it was 2 years ago, that talked about a lot of these issues. And actually, it was the politicization of medicine that led to a lot of dangerous outcomes for people, including the idea that older women shouldn't get hormone replacement therapy because it could allegedly lead to osteoporosis, but it turns out to actually be really the benefits really outweigh the potential drawbacks of that treatment. They also talked about the idea that people thought that not exposing your kids to peanuts would prevent peanut allergies. It actually led peanut allergies to skyrocket. So I think sometimes we get into these echo chambers, particularly in science, where because a few studies say one thing that we all just accept it as gospel. And it's really important to have disruptors in the system who are willing to actually take a second look at the evidence, particularly in this case with autism, because most of the studies that have been done, granted outside of several of the Tylenol ones, have been concluding that autism is genetically caused and that there are not environmental causes. So actually going back and looking at potential environmental causes is very important. And I disagree on it as a political vulnerability because there are a very strong political bloc of women who believe very strongly in the Make America Healthy Again movement. That was actually, I think, one of the factors as to why women did not abandon Trump as much as the political prognosticators thought that they were going to. And I would also just throw out there, I had no idea before the MAHA movement that Tylenol, even for adults, can cause liver issues. And that was something that was very well publicized. So I don't think it's quite that cut and dry.
Okay. There's going to be a lot more conversation about it. I don't remember a case quite like this. And all I'll say is the status quo is not good. The status quo of the rates of this problem is too high, particularly for boys. And so I applaud anyone who's looking to try to figure out a solution. But this is a controversial solution. There's no doubt about it. And the president's not being given the benefit of the doubt by much of the medical community, not by the media. And if somebody has other ideas about dealing with autism, I think they should definitely come forward and share them rather than just being critical of at least an effort to see if there's a solution. With that, a quick word from one of our sponsors, Cozy Earth. Recommend right now that you go to cozyearth.com and take advantage of the ability to save 40% off the entire site, including the bedding with the 10-year warranty and a 100-day money-back guarantee, as well as the capacity to buy my favorite pants. Any of them, really. I've got a bunch of different pairs. The bamboo joggers are particularly popular, I know. But go right now to cozyearth.com, use the promo code TWOWAY, save yourself 40% off the entire site, whatever you want to buy. The response I got, believe it or not, when I was in Arizona, a lot of people came up to me during and after the event and talked about two-way, but two men came up to me and said they love the pants. And one of them, accompanied by his wife, and she said what spouses say all the time when people have bought the pants, which is, my husband looks so good in those pants. Cozy Earth, built for real life, made to keep up with yours. Cozy Earth, again, 40% off. Go to cozyearth.com. Use the code TWOWAY.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well,
Easier than a walk in the park? Hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.